The materials and supplies are listed on page 2 of the pattern, and I will go over that now. The fabric requirements are based on 42-inch wide fabric. You will need a half yard of each. For this bag, I will be using, for the exterior, this paisley print. For the interior lining, I'll be using this light peach color. The fusible interfacing I'm using is medium weight. And you also need the foam, which gives it a nice feel and structure to the bag. I do recommend that you pre-wash your fabrics before cutting. This removes any chemicals and also tests for shrinkage and fabric bleeding, and your interfacing will adhere better. Let's move on to the hardware. The hardware you're going to need is a magnetic snap with the washers. You'll need 2 connectors, a slider. You'll need strapping that measures 63 inches in length, and it should be the same width as your hardware. I suggest a 1.5 inch width. You will also need a 7-inch zipper that would be measuring metal to metal, or a 8.5 inch zipper tape. I will be using zipper tape on my bag, and I've cut that to 8.5 inches. I've put on my pull already, and I have also tacked down the ends of the zipper so it will not open up while I'm handling the zipper. Another item you might want to add to your bag is a brand label or any type of label that you might want to put on the outside or the inside of your bag. I will be using my brand label, the Nancy Steer brand label. You're going to need some tools and notions to complete this project. You will need the needles for your machine, your thread, bobbin. Wind up your bobbin full on, especially when you're going to do top stitching. We need a zipper foot. I use a narrow one. These are my fabric scissors. These I cut paper with. I never use these on paper, so have a general pair of scissors that you can use for cutting out your patterns, maybe cutting out a plastic zipper. You'll need a seam ripper, some marking tools. I go between 2 items. I use chalk, and I also use these Frixion pens. This is an erasable pen that with heat from an iron, the marks go away. So that's a very helpful tool. I like to work with a pin cushion that I strap onto my wrist, so I have my pins handy. And if I don't want it on my wrist, I just set it next to me. So have your pins ready. And you'll also need some clips. These are the famous Clover clips. I've got a little box that I keep next to me while I'm working, and also transfer this around to my machine back and forth. And another clip I like to use is, I picked these up in a beauty supply house. It's just a hair clip. It's flat. They really work nice for pinning around the edges. You'll see that in the video. So get some clips ready. Make sure you have your favorite ruler handy. I like to work with this small one for marking where snaps and things are going. I have larger ones as well, but this is pretty much my go-to ruler. Not necessary, but you could add some nippers. Scissors will do the job. No need to go out and spend extra money unless you are building up your sewing case. Then you might want to little by little start adding some extra items in. I also like to use this edge stitch pressure foot, and it's a really handy tool. It locks in on the edge of something, and it keeps everything flowing really nice and straight. I'm probably going to be using this quite a bit in this tutorial. Another little extra that I have is this magnetic seam guide. It just goes onto my machine on top of the metal plate. It's magnified and it does not budge. So it's really, have to look at those very narrow lines that are engraved on the plates. You can just snap this on where the line is, and it gives you a perfect guide. Another extra you might want to add is something that can turn out corners on the bag. Generally, you can use your finger. This is a little bit helpful if you need just a little bit help going around round edges. And another little extra that I use is this double-sided tape. I use it mainly for zippers. This is a 1/4 inch, and I find this very helpful. I'll add a link under the video. This I got from Sailrite. and they have a lot of nice items on their website. So this is the double-sided tape. And the other thing that I sometimes, one of my go-to tools, again, not required for this project, is rotary cutters, depending on what I'm making, how I'm cutting, if I'm drafting. So these are also other useful tools. This Olfa is pretty much my go-to, and I use this Fiskars when I'm making my large duffel bags, or if I'm doing a massive assembly of like a massive production, I'll use this one. So that's what you need in the way of tools. Let's continue on and start with the pattern. By now you should have printed out your pattern and read through it. This is a very important step, and the project will go smoother because you're familiar with the steps that are listed on page 1. So please take a look and read through that, and actually read through the whole pattern. But before you do that, you need to make sure you print it out accurately. So once you download the pattern, open up the file in your computer and go to page 3 and print that page only. Print page 3. And once that prints out, measure this square. Make sure this measures 1 inch by 1 inch. If not, make sure you follow the instructions that it says here until you get that right. You'll probably have it right the first time. But it's very important you do that, because the size of the pattern pieces could then be off, and which will result in the size of the bag being off. So go ahead and get your pattern ready. Read through it if you haven't done that already. Look at the diagrams. Go through the steps, so you have a good understanding of how that's going to be, and it's all going to go together perfectly well with this tutorial. So let's get to that point, and now we are ready to move on farther with the pattern pieces. Go ahead and prepare the pattern pieces by cutting around the edges. Use regular scissors for this step, very important. And I have a clip following this showing you how I do that step. So go ahead and get the pattern pieces ready. All right, so now we are going to get our patterns ready, our pattern pieces. Now that we've printed out the pattern pieces, we need to get them cut out. And I just want to make sure I've got my one inch square, and I do, so I can start to cut this out. I'm doing my bag with the round corners, so if you are doing that as well, you can skip the front pocket that has the square corners. I really prefer the round. I like the look of the bag much better with round corners. So it's up to you, whatever you want to use. And what you're going to do is just cut around the pattern pieces, get them ready, and you'll just do this on all of them. Just keep cutting them out, working the way around, working around the corners, and then once you have them cut out, then just follow what it says you need. For example, on this front pocket, we'll need a main fabric, a lining fabric, a interfacing, and one foam. So basically 4 pieces of this one. And just continue cutting these out. I'm not going to waste your time by watching me cut all them out. Just follow what I was doing. And inside the pattern, when you get to the piece that's the front and back, you'll be taping 2 pieces together. And then you can lay it on the fold of the fabric to cut it out. I like to duplicate this page, ignore the fold line, tape it together, and then I'm just working with one big piece that I lay down on the piece of fabric. And I also find it helpful. I have a really heavy cast iron weight, and when I put this on top of the fabric, I like to weigh it down with this weight so it doesn't shift. And then sometimes I'll just like push it to this end and start tracing around the pattern like that, following what the instructions say. And other times I'll just look up what the size of it is and use a ruler and just draft it without even using the pattern piece. I'll just draft it out with the ruler, and that's also a fast method to getting it drawn out. So it's up to you however you want to do it. So let's get to that. Get everything cut out, the patterns cut out, get your fabrics cut out, get all that cut out, and we'll meet back here. I already have mine ready. Additionally to that, you're going to need to cut out these reinforcements. There are 4 little pieces of fabrics. It's listed on the pattern, so just follow when you get to that step. We're going to use these for the magnetic snap. So please get all of your pieces ready, and then we can now move on to page 7 of the pattern and start with step 1, fuse the interfacing. Okay, we are now on step 1, fusing the interfacing. This is on page 7 of the pattern. I have already done that on my pieces. The reason why this is a different color is because I decided not to use the lining color when you open up the flap on my bag. Mine is going to be a colored piece, so when you open up the bag, you're going to see the color. So I have all my pieces ready with the interfacing onto the lining. And now what we'll be able to do is move on to step 2 and attach the foam. I've organized my pieces so that I have the pattern piece together with the foam piece that it needs to be sewed onto. What you're going to need to do is add some pins all the way around to keep it together, and then sew around the complete outline of each piece with a 1/8 seam allowance. And so I'm going to go put my pins on, go to the machine, and then meet you back here. For this step, we're going to attach the magnetic snap to the flap lining piece. That won't be any of the pieces that have foam on it. So get out your flap lining piece. This is mine. Yours probably is the same color as your lining. Again, I chose to do mine the same as the exterior of the bag. And you'll be using the male piece, which is the thinner piece of the snap, this one here. And we're going to need to make some markings on the piece of fabric. So what you need to do is fold the piece of fabric in half to get a light crease mark, and then you're going to mark the center with a fabric pen on the lower edge. There's my center. Once you have your center, you're going to measure from the center mark up 1 1/4 inches and make a dot. We're going to do this more than once because we're going to be covering up with one of those reinforcement pieces. So now what you want to do is take one of those little 2x2 pieces that we prepared, the reinforcement pieces. You're going to place it over, center it over the dot, and press it on. Once you press that on, we're going to repeat the measurement going up 1 1/4 inches to the center and make a dot. So get to that point and we'll continue on. Okay, all right, now I have this ready. Now you should be on page 8 of the pattern instructions. We have the reinforcement piece adhered on, and then I found my center again and I measured up 1 1/4 inches. So now we're ready to start working with the actual pieces of the snap. You're going to take the metal disc guard that comes with the snap and lay it down over that dot Straighten it out as much as you can, and then mark inside those slots, okay? At that point, now is when we're gonna use our seam ripper, and what you're gonna wanna do is we're gonna go inside, we're gonna poke through, and we're gonna make a small slit. The smaller is better. We just want the prongs of this to be able to fit through. So don't cut end to end. Just make a little bit. You can always open it up later. So I'm gonna open that up on each, just poke through. And I'm gonna force this up just a little bit. I could feel that it moved up a bit. And then I'm gonna do it in the other slit. Staying inside the line, poking through. And I'm just gonna push it up a little bit so I can feel those threads tearing. And from that point, now we're ready to put this on. So turn your piece, well, first of all, I think I'll try to push these through where I can see where the lines are on this end. There's one poked through, and now I'm poke the other one through, that poked through as well, chalk on there. Okay, now take the washer and put that on top of the prongs, and you're gonna need something to push that down with. I don't have my screwdriver next to me. Press it down nice and tight. And then we are going to take another reinforcement piece and press it on top of everything we just did. That kind of protects the inside of your bag. So let's press that down and we'll continue. Okay, my piece is ready, and I'm just testing the corners. They're pretty stuck down. I just want to mention to you, when you press this on, I don't rub the iron across the actual metal snap. I just press on this side, and then I press here, and I hold up the iron down for a bit and press there, just on the edge of the iron. So that's a good method to use to get that adhered really nice. Okay, so we've got that done, and now we're gonna move on, and we are gonna make the flap. What you're gonna need for this step is the exterior flap piece, this is mine, and the lining flap piece with the right sides together. This is my lining flap piece, the piece that you just put the snap on. You can see in the diagram when you lay these two together, you're gonna see this on the top. So you're gonna need to pin these together, and we're gonna sew them with a 3/8 seam allowance, starting on the top right corner, and we're gonna work all the way down until we reach this top left corner. Remember to backstitch at your start and stop positions, but leave this edge, the top, open. So let's go ahead and put that together and continue on. We're not sewing across the top, so I can put lots of clips in here, and I won't be removing these right now. I'm just using them to hold everything together, and it reminds me not to go there. So just stick in some pins in the other corners. I'll stick in a few more for this tutorial, but a lot of times I won't need that many. I'll just hold down the ends. So let's get to stitching. 3/8 inch, go all the way around, don't stitch on the top. All right, now we're just gonna sew around the sides to get the flap attached piece to piece. I've changed my thread out now I am going to use this beige because I'll be top stitching with that, and I think you already understand what I meant with the foam, how to do that. Here's the red here. So I'm just going to continue on with the regular thread that I'm going to be using for this bag. So let's get going. Okay, how did that go? For me, truthfully, I had to rip something out, but I fixed it. My corner was a little bit off, and since it's rounded, I really needed that to be perfect, and I was going too fast. So just to mention, don't hurry while you're doing this. Take your time, and that's the price you pay. I had to rip out some stitches. Now we're gonna clip the corners outside of the stitching line. Make sure you don't catch your stitching line. And we're gonna trim the seams to reduce the bulk. We're still on page 9, so I'm just gonna cut this down a bit, and then we're gonna flip this around. We're gonna turn it and then do some top stitching. I am rushing. I have to stop rushing. So continue to just go all the way around. You get the idea. Okay. Just missing a little piece there. All right, so we cut off those corners and we trimmed around, and now we are going to turn the right side out and push out the corners. I always do that with my fingers first. This looks a little too pointy for a round corner, but I will see on that. And turn this one out as well. Turn out your piece. This is when I like to use this little tool. I'm not going to push in the corner. I'm just going to rub it along the side. This helps because we're also going to be pressing, so I'm going to just push it along the side there. And that helps too. I can use this other rounder edge to get into here in my corner, my round corner, to give it a little better shape. I'm liking how that's looking. This is going to be the outside. I did go with this because it just happened to have something almost centered there. So I went with that. Okay, we've got this flipped around. Now once the flap looks really nice and even, you're going to give it a good pressing, and then we're going to baste the upper raw edge here with we're going to close this up with a 1/2 centimeter seam allowance, so it won't be seen when we're attaching the flap later on. Okay, so let's get up to that point. Right now you're still on page 9, and then we're going to continue on with the optional feature to add some top stitching. I think I'm going to go for that. I did it on this bag, the first one I did, and I do like it that you can see here where it's finished off it better with the top stitching. Before I stitched it, it didn't look that fit. It looked to me like it was missing something, so I'm going to go with the top stitching. So let's get to that point and we'll continue on. So there, it's nice and flat pressed. I'm going to run my stitching down here. that 5 centimeter, half a centimeter. And half a centimeter is just a little bit narrower than 1/4 of an inch. So that's what I'm going to do on this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the top stitching. And for that, I think I am going to use this other foot that I spoke about in earlier on with the tools that we went over. So let's do that and keep moving forward. All right, let's get this closed up. You know, I sew with a big magnifying glass, and I know it's getting in the way a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but I just love sewing with that. It's so easy on the eyes and magnifies it. So sorry if it's in the way a little bit. Okay, it also has a very bright light, and I love that as well. It's so easy on the eyes. It saves you from a lot of sewing fatigue. All right, so let's close this top up. Okay, so now we are ready to do the top stitching. If you don't want to do it now, you can do it in a few steps further on if you want more time to think about it. I'm going to do mine now, and that'll give you a chance to see what it looks like. And I'm going to flip out to a different foot. I'm going to use this edging foot, which, if you can see, over here, there's a piece of metal that extends down, so my fabric is going to be pushed against there as I'm sewing. This is going to be pushed against there, which is nice, so I'll get an even stitch along the edge. Even though this is already sewed together, I rolled it back to make sure that I have a nice line across here, and I stuck in some some clips to hold it together. I think I'm calling these pins because they're hair pins. That's what they call them. So if I say it again, you know what I mean. So let's continue here. I'm going to get this onto the machine. I'm going to check my width. I think I'm going to move over. I don't know if you can see my needle. That's about at 1/4 of an inch. I think that will sew pretty nicely. I'm just going to check a measurement real quick. I will be sewing this at 1/4 inch. That's what I did on the other bag, and it looks pretty nice. And I'm changing my stitch length to 4. I'm finding that the 4 actually is a good length for all of this, what I'm doing right now, except for the zipper. That'll be different. But anyhow, let's keep going and get this trim done. And go very slow when you do this. Okay, I have closed the top of the flap, and I've done the top stitching around the edge. It feels really nice. It looks really nice. On the bag, it's going to look something like this, because this extends over the top of the bag, and then the bag, the face of it begins right about here where I've got this print. So I think this is gonna be pretty nice. So that's it on the flap. And what we're gonna do now, remember you can do your top stitching further on. There's still another chance. I'm feeling the snap down here a little bit. And I think on the next portion, when we do the pocket, I think I'm gonna fold the prongs out and see how that feels. The reason being is this fabric I chose is a little bit thin, the main one. When you use a canvas, you don't feel that as much. Anyhow, let's continue on. Let's keep moving forward with the bag. We are on page 10, and we are going to set the flap aside for now.